Hi, and welcome back to English for Specific Purposes, Level B1. We are your hosts. I'm Mr. Darrell.
And I'm Ms. Tatia.
And today we are going to talk about technology, specifically tall buildings.
Interesting. გამარჯობათ, მე თათია ვარ, ეს კი დერილია. კეთილი იყოს თქვენი დაბრუნება ჩვენს ტელესკოლაში. დღევანდელი გაკვეთილის თემა ტექნოლოგიაა. მაგრამ ვიდრე უშუალოდ გაკვეთილზე გადავიდოდეთ, მოდი გაკვეთილის გეგმას შევხედოთ.
We're going to start with the introduction, as we always do. Bring up a bunch of words that we will need for the reading text today. Then we'll move straight into the reading text. We'll look at grammar, and then we will sum up everything for today with some homework.
დღევანდელი გაკვეთილი მოკლე შესწავლით დაიწყება. შემდეგ შევისწავლით ახალ სიტყვებს. შემდეგ წავიკითხავთ ტექსტს, ამას მოყვება გრამატიკა. შემდეგ შევაჯამებთ გაკვეთილს და დავასრულებთ ყველასათვის საყვარელი საშინაო დავალებით. Okay, let's get started.
Let's get to it.
Okay, but before we learn some words, I think that we have to discuss some things, right? Mr. Darrell, some people believe that if something is bigger, it's better, especially about buildings. So if they have big house, they think that it's better. Do you agree with this? If yes, why? If no, why you don't?
Well, let me say it this way. Just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better. I mean, what about houses? Like, some people might prefer large houses, sure, mansions or something, but other people are quite happy being in small apartments, small flats.
Yeah, I agree with you. A very small flat or a house can be very beautiful and very comfortable, and a huge one might be ugly.
And too much work to take care of.
Of course. Okay, now let's get down to work. Let's look at our first set of vocabulary and let's see what we have here. So the first word we have is innovation. Innovation is a noun, and in Georgian it is innovacja. I need your help, Mr. Darrell, to define the word.
Innovation is something new. It can be a new idea, a new method, a new piece of technology, when you're pushing the boundaries a bit further than they have been before.
Okay, I think that innovation is the phenomenon that drives the mankind, that drives the
technology,
development
mankind,
and technology.
Society, civilization.
So I think that innovation is really, really important. So innovation is a noun, and in Georgian it is innovacja. Innovation, innovacja. Let's together.
Innovation.
Now we can move on, and our new word is industry. Industry is a noun, and in Georgian it is industria. Mr. Darrell, how would you define the word?
This way. The production of goods, especially those made in factories. That would be industrial work and industry.
Yeah, I agree with you. Our example here is industry of technology is evolving quickly.
With innovation, industry can often evolve very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now let's look at our next word, and this is breakthrough. Breakthrough is a noun, and in Georgian it is მნიშვნელოვანი მიღწევა. Mr. Darrell, can you define the word for us?
Yeah, it's a good word actually. It's a sudden innovation or discovery that comes after maybe hard work or maybe through inspiration, but a sudden new step or a new discovery.
Yes, for example, discovery of some kind of medicine that will cure cancer would be a breakthrough.
Great example. The first vaccination back in the 18th century would have been a breakthrough in medicine.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So breakthrough is a noun, and in Georgian it is მნიშვნელოვანი მიღწევა. Breakthrough, მნიშვნელოვანი მიღწევა. Let's say together, breakthrough. And the next word is optical. Optical is an adjective, and in Georgian it is optikuri. Mr. Darrell, can you define the word for us?
Indeed, it is something that's connected to sight or vision. And in my case, I have kind of poor eyesight, so my optical abilities are low.
Oh, really? Really? Okay. So optical is an adjective and in Georgian it is optikuri. Optical, optikuri. Let's say it together.
Optical.
And we can move on to the next word, which is biotechnology. Biotechnology is a noun, and in Georgian it is biotechnology. Mr. Daryl, can you define the word for us?
Sure. It's a combination of two words, bio and technological. And what it is the use of bacteria or plant or animal cells to provide scientific breakthroughs or industrial or medical breakthroughs as well. And you can use it to make drugs or vaccines and so on.
Oh, very, very interesting thing, an interesting field, right? Okay, biotechnology is a noun, and in Georgian it is biotechnologia. Biotechnology, biotechnologia. Let's say together.
Biotechnology.
And I think that we have finished with the first set of words, and now let's move on to the task. Monitorზე თქვენ დაინახავთ განმარტებებს და ჩვენ ერთად უნდა შევეცადოთ სწორი სიტყვა შეურჩიოთ ამ განმარტებებს. Let's start. The use of bacteria, plant or animal cells for industrial or scientific purposes, for example, to make drugs or chemicals. What do we call it?
We spoke about it a little bit, and it is, I would say, biotechnology.
Yeah, you're right. We said that this is very, very important, biotechnology. Now let's move on, and can you read the definition, Mr. Daryl?
Yes, a new idea, method, piece of equipment, and so on.
Yes, and we said that this is innovation. And here we are. Innovation is a new idea, method, or piece of equipment.
Well done. Let's go on to the next one.
We can move on.
A discovery or achievement that comes after a lot of hard work. What is that? Ms. Tatia.
Yeah, I think this is breakthrough. And we also said that the cure for cancer would be breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we have one definition and two options, and now let's try to choose the right word for this definition. Connected with sight or light. And this is?
Optical.
Yeah, you're right. It's optical. Okay, and I think that easiest task is the last one. We have one definition and one word. So the production of goods, especially those made in factories, is called industry. And we are, of course, right. And I think that now it's time for the next section, which is reading section. We are going to read a text, but before we read a text, we have to learn some very important words to understand the text better. ეხლა კი კითხვის დავალებაზე გადავიდეთ, თუმცა ვიდრე უშუალო ტექსტს წავიკითხავთ, მოდით ვისწავლოთ რამოდენიმე სიტყვა, რომელიც დაგვეხმარება ტექსტის უკეთესად გაგებაში. And let's see what we have. The first word is fiberglass. Fiberglass is a noun, and in Georgian it is bochkovani mina. I definitely need your help to define this word.
Yeah, it's a great product. It's a great material. It's a light but hard material that is used to make things like containers and boats as well. So it's extremely hard but light, and that makes it perfect for a boat, for example.
Oh, yes. So here we have an example. Many new structures are made of fiberglass. So it means that this is material, is it?
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's right. I said that.
Now let's move on the next word. Mr. Terrell?
Maintain. Would you be able to provide us with a definition?
Maintain is a verb, and in Georgian it is shenarchuneba. But this time I need your definition in English.
Maintain is when you make something stay the same and you don't change it in any way.
Yeah, absolutely right. And here we have an example. Our technology maintained high rates internationally. So it means that they kept these high rates, right?
They kept a high reputation or a high value internationally.
That's right. So maintain is a verb, and in Georgian it means shenarchuneba. maintain, შენარჩუნება. Let's together.
Maintain.
And our new word is launch. Launch is a verb and in Georgian it means გაშვება. წარმოებაში გაშვება. Mr. Daryl, can you help me with the definition?
Yes, well, to launch something is to kind of send it through the air, but in our context here, more in the sense of sending a space station or a space rocket into space. I believe there are plans to send people to Mars and the moon one day.
Yeah, you're right. And you can also launch some products.
Yes, you can also launch products. Microsoft and Apple are famous for their product launches.
Yes, so launch is a verb and in Georgian it means გაშვება. Launch, გაშვება. Let's say together, launch. And let's move on to the next word and this is herald. Herald is a verb and in Georgian it means ცნობება, უწყება. Mr. Daryl, I still need your help.
Sure. Herald is when you kind of announce something before it happens. So you kind of prepare the audience for something. It's connected to an old word from the medieval times. Kings and queens used to have their herald, a person who would come out and then announce that the king was arriving or something.
Don't say, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
It's news for me. So an example we have here is introduction of this technology will herald new era. So it means that it will be some kind of announcement of a new era, right?
A new era that's starting.
Yeah. So herald is a verb and in Georgian it is ცნობება, უწყება. Herald, ცნობება, უწყება. Let's say together, herald. And the next word is combat. Combat is a verb and in Georgian it means ბრძოლა, ჭიდილი. And Mr. Daryl?
Well, it has its obvious like physical combat meaning, but in our context, it's to combat, to defend against something bad, or to solve a difficult problem, in fact.
And we have a very good sentence, example sentence here. We need to combat unfairness in the world. This is kind of my slogan or motto. I really like this sentence. Okay, we have to fight against unfairness in the world.
I know that about you, and you should probably have that written out on a T-shirt.
Maybe one day. Okay, combat is a verb, and in Georgian it means bრძოლა, ჭიდილი. Combat, bრძოლა, ჭიდილი. Let's say together, combat. And our new word is congestion. Congestion is a noun, and it means, in Georgian it means საცობი, მჭიდრო დასახლება. Mr. Daryl, can you define the word?
It's connected to the word overcrowded, and it means when something is blocked up with, it could be people, could be objects, could be anything that kind of stops the flow, the easy flow of information or people or transportation, anything.
Yeah, so and our example here is there was a big congestion on the road. It means that there were a lot of cars and there was kind of a traffic jam. So it's the synonym of traffic jam, as I can see, right?
Yeah, one of the synonyms, yeah.
Okay, so congestion is a noun and in Georgian it is საცობი, მჭიდრო დასახლება. Congestion, საცობი, მჭიდრო დასახლება. Let's say together.
Congestion.
And the next word is aviation. Aviation is a noun and in Georgian it is aviația. Mr. Daryl, your definition for this word?
It's quite simple actually. It's just the flying of planes. So the practice of traveling through airplanes.
Okay, and here is an example. Aviation has evolved a lot during the past century. Yeah, of course.
It has.
When there was time when there were no planes at all, and now we have different types of planes crossing the sky all the time.
Are you afraid of flying?
Yes, I am. Okay. Now the next word is transit. Transit is a verb, and in Georgian it is tranziti გადაყვანა. Mr. Daryl, your definition for this word?
This is the activity of transporting something from one place to another, and we call it the transit of something.
Yeah, you're right. Transit is a verb, and in Georgian it is tranziti გადაყვანა. Transit. Tranziti გადაყვანა. Let's say together. Transit. And I think that we have finished with the set of vocabulary and we are ready to read the text. But before we read the text, I have a few questions. What is the biggest building you've ever been in and why were you there? I know that you travel a lot, you have visited a lot of places, so I think that you have an answer for this question.
Yes, I have. And it was actually this year in January. I was in New York, and for the first time I visited the Empire State Building, the very famous.
Really?
Once it was the tallest building in the world. It isn't anymore, but it was very tall.
Really? And how did you feel?
Well, I could see all of New York from the top floor, and it was a fantastic sight. But of course, I wouldn't want to be outside of the window there.
I would like to be there one day. Okay, now I think it's time to read our text and get very, very interesting information. The Burj Khalifa, the tallest tower in the world, and the Airbus A380, the biggest passenger plane, are both examples of large-scale engineering mode possible nowadays with the new technologies and materials available. Monster trucks are another example of such large-scale engineering using fiberglass for their bodies. Burj Khalifa is 828 meters in height and it has 160 floors. It is taller than Eiffel Tower. It cost $1.5 billion to build. It is estimated that 35,000 people could live there at one time. It opened on the 4th of January and it was kept a secret until the opening ceremony. Engineers think that Burj Khalifa will maintain to be the tallest building for a while.
The Airbus A380 is the world's largest passenger airplane. It has existed for 12 years, but now, according to the airplane makers, it will no longer be produced. The reason for this is that nowadays, giant four-engine passenger planes are no longer needed. When it was launched, it was heralded as the future of aviation. This will result in significant job losses at companies linked to the plane's manufacture. The plane was designed to combat congestion at airports by reducing the number of planes needed in the skies. This would mean that these planes would require hub airports where passengers would transit. Those hub airports are refusing to accept A380 airplanes as the demand grew on the non-stop flights.
Another example of the biggest buildings in the world is China's largest building called the New Century Global Center, located in Chengdu, Sichuan province. It's 500 meters long and 400 meters wide and 100 meters high. The slogan of the building is Chengdu Can Do. Inside the center, it's almost like a small city. The building is so big that 20 Sydney opera houses could fit inside. It's almost 3 times the size of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. It took thousands of workers just 3 years to build the enormous structure. The center includes hotels, movie theaters, shops, and ice rink big enough to hold international competitions. The center is an important part of plans to make Chengdu a 21st century city. I think that we have finished with the text, and we've heard lots of very interesting information about giant buildings. Now it's time to check how well we remember the text. ეხლა კი გადავედით კითხვის დავალებაზე. მონიტორზე თქვენ დაინახავთ წინადადებებს და უნდა განვსახუროთ ეს წინადადება შეესაბამება თუ არა სიმართლეს. თუ წინადადება შეესაბამება სიმართლეს, ვამბობთ true. თუ წინადადება არ შეესაბამება სიმართლეს, ტექსტის მიხედვით ვამბობთ false. Now let's try and say if the sentences are true or false. And our first sentence is, New Century Global Center is the tallest building in the world. Do you think that this is right or wrong?
No, this one I know cannot be right. It's got to be false.
Let's check. You're right. It is false because we read the Burj Khalifa is the tallest tower in the world and not New Century Global Center. And the next statement is New Century Global Center is 500 meters high and 100 meters long. And do you think that this is true or false? Do you remember it from the text?
I kind of remember it, and I think it's false.
Let's check. Yes, you are right. It's false because we read. It's 500 meters long and 400 meters wide and 100 meters high. Okay, and the next statement is Burj Khalifa will soon not be the tallest building in the world. I think that it might be true because there are more and more big buildings nowadays. What do you think?
Let's check.
No, it's false because in the text we read, engineers think that Burj Khalifa will remain to be the tallest building for a while. Okay, unfortunately, I couldn't guess the right answer. And now it's time for grammar. Now let's read the sentences we have on the screen. Another example of the biggest buildings in the world is China's largest building. And another sentence, it's taller than Eiffel Tower. Mr. Terrell, do you think that the sentences show some kind of comparison? Things are compared there.
Yeah, in both sentences, something is compared to another thing.
Yes, so today we're going to talk about adjectives and their comparative and superlative forms. ეხლა კი გადავიდეთ გრამატიკაზე. ჩვენი გრამატიკის თემაა ზეცართავი სახელების ხარისხი. Now let's listen to Daryl.
Comparative adjectives compare one person or thing with another and enable us to say whether a person or thing has more or less of a particular quality. The Burj Khalifa, for example, is taller than the Chinese New Century Global Center. Superlative adjectives describe one person or thing as having more of a quality than all other people or things in a group. Here's the example. Burj Khalifa is the tallest building on Earth. Usually, if an adjective has only one syllable, we add er to make the comparative form. We add the plus est to make this superlative form. So here's a simple example right away. Clean becomes cleaner and then becomes the cleanest of all. Small becomes smaller and then becomes the smallest. There are some spelling changes. If there is one vowel followed by one consonant at the end of the adjective, we often double the consonants. So wet, which has one vowel and one consonant at the end, is doubled, and we get wetter, and then the wettest. Big, which follows the same pattern, becomes bigger, and then the biggest. If the adjective ends in y, this often changes to I. So dry, with its y ending, becomes drier with an I instead of the y, and then, of course, becomes the driest. If the adjective ends in E, we don't add another E, just an R or the and ST. So nice becomes nicer, and then, of course, becomes the nicest. There are also adjectives of two or more syllables which take the more and the most form to form their regular construction. So when you're making the comparative form, you add more, for example, more expensive. And when you're making the superlative form, you add the most, for example, the most expensive. There are a few adjectives that we have to use more or the most with, even though they only have one syllable. We can't add er or est to the following few examples. Here's one. Real becomes more real and the most real, not realer or realist.
And I think that we have ended with grammar, and we have to check how well we can use the adjectives and their degrees. So the first sentence is, then we have adjective old, then my brother. Here I think that I am compared to my brother. So I have to use comparative form and I have to add ER. So I would say I'm older than my brother.
Well, let's check.
I'm right.
Excellent. The next example is the Bugatti is the something, and we have a bracketed word, fast, and then car. So what would the answer be for this?
I think that this one car is compared to all the others. So here I need to use superlative form. So I would say Bugatti is the fastest car.
Excellent.
And I think that I'm right.
Yes.
So let's look at this sentence. My friend is, then I have fun, adjective fun, then me. I'm compared to my friend, so I have to use comparative form. So I would say my friend is more fun than me.
Well said. It's one of the exceptions.
Yes, I took into consideration your recommendations about grammar. And our next sentence is,
This towel is, now the adjective is dry, then another one. So the answer to this, because it's a comparative form, is this towel is drier than the other one.
yeah, but what about spelling?
The Y would change into an I.
Yeah, and we add ER as we can see on the screen. And I think that we have come to the end of our lesson. And as usual, I want to ask you to summarize the lesson.
Yes, Ms. Tatya, and we looked at technology vocabulary in the beginning, as you remember. There were quite a few words. Then we looked at the reading about tall buildings, in particular the one in Dubai. And finally, we closed off with grammar using comparative forms.
Oh, it was such an interesting lesson with full of information. But unfortunately now we have come to the end and we have to say goodbye to our audience, but we have to give homework. And what do we have homework for today, Mr. Daryl?
It's a simple question. Write a paragraph about a famous building.
Oh, I think that the answers will be very, very interesting to read. And where can the homework be uploaded, Mr. Daryl?
The homework can be uploaded with the address you see on the screen.
And what about the model for
And the
homework?
model can be found at the same address, so you don't have to go very far for the model answer.
გთხოვთ დავალება ეკრანზე მითითებულ მისამართზე ატვირთოთ. Now we have to say goodbye. We have more interesting topics ahead. So stay with us and keep on learning. Bye.
Bye, everyone.